Hey everyone, this is Max back again with a solar panel unboxing, and then I'll have a review video as I usually do after this. But right now I'm just going to unbox this solar panel. Now what this is, clearly you can see it's called the Atem Power 200 watt fixed solar blanket. It's a foldable solar panel and folds many times over, so I'm excited to see how compact it is. What's special about this one compared to other ones that I've had on the channel before is that this one has a charge controller that can connect to a battery. So the company that actually sent me this, I talked to a gentleman from VicOffRoad, so VicOffRoad.com, and they have a really cool website with like off-road and camping gear. So for your car, to make it more off-road, they have lights and all sorts of things, but they also have a section for camping and solar equipment. And this was one of the items that they I believe recently are releasing, and then they're coming out with another version that doesn't have a charge controller, so it's mainly meant for portable power stations and charging devices directly, most likely. But this one, I needed to get a battery for it, an external battery, because I want to test it with charging just a basic battery. And also I'm going to see if it will charge any of my power stations, which I'm sure it can because I have several different ones that have different connectors. So I'll be testing both of those in a review video. But I'll go ahead and start unboxing this. This is the largest solar panel that I've ever either unboxed or owned. The largest one I've had is 200 or 120 watts, and this one is quite a bit bigger. So I don't think I'll be able to show you right now the full scale, but in the review you'll see it. So let's go ahead and start unboxing. And so this came in another box, and then I opened that box to get to this one. So there's a little more insulation for shipping. All right. Now this thing is heavy. There it is. Okay. So I'm not sure of the exact weight of this, but it's quite hefty. Now it is it's folded in a way that makes it pretty easy to carry. I mean, it's got a nice carrying handle on here. It's a rubberized plastic, and it looks like it's pretty well woven in to the actual frame. Now let's go over the charge controller, and there's probably maybe some other cables in there. I'll go ahead and open up that first. Okay, yeah, we got quite a few things going on here. We have the user manual, charge controller, I'll go over that in a second. We got quite a few cables here. Now, I know I've mentioned this, but it connects both to portable power stations and to the charge controller that charges like a standard like battery. If you're charging a portable power station, you will not want to use the charge controller because your power station, whatever company it comes from, it already has a charge controller. So there's really no point in having a charge controller connected to another charge controller. I'm not sure what happens if you do try that, but I don't recommend it. But I'll go ahead and make sure to test it out in the review so you get a good idea of how to properly use it with a portable power station as well as a battery. So first here, actually before I go over this, I want to show you the inside because this is where it connects. Now I don't know if my camera can really get a good angle because I can't really see the screen that well on my phone here, but you see this giant, I think this is just a standard Anderson connector. I could be wrong on that. but it is wired into this small box here that is the basically where the power comes from, and that's where you connect it. So first and foremost is this cable. Now I have a cable similar to this that came with my LA Conta solar panel. That's a 120 watt solar panel. It's a little different, but it has similar connections. Now I believe this is an aviation plug. I've never used this. I've never had a reason to use it. But it has that. It has what looks like an 8mm barrel connector, which I've used this before in Jackery power stations. I've used it on my Jackery 500 or 300, and it worked really well. So I'll hopefully be able to test that out. And then I've definitely used this before, the Anderson power pole, which I can use with multiple different power stations to charge. Okay, and here we have two 18 gauge. They look like DC 5521 connectors, so that's pretty cool. And they are mainly, this is the main section, and then they all connect to this like grouping of 4, including these 4 connections. So this is one end, the Anderson power pole, and this is the other end. I'm not sure how long that would be, maybe 3 feet long. Okay, now this is making perfect sense. So this, I believe, is just the standard Anderson connector. I've never used these before, but they're pretty beefy, and this standard Anderson will connect to the Anderson power pole, and now it all makes sense, where you just connect them upside down so they snap, or not snap, but they connect, and you officially can connect to one of these connectors. So we have some just Velcro straps here. Okay, now they're all connected here. We have a pretty long cable here. I'm excited to see how long this cable actually is. Pretty thick gauge. I want to say maybe 10 or 12 gauge. But you connect this end into the solar panel, extend it all the way. You could see that there's a junction here where you have the Andersons connected, and then they branch out to some alligator clips. So yeah, you connect these to the opposite ends, the negative and positive of the battery, and that will officially help you charge the battery. Now, time for the charge controller. So this is the first charge controller that I've ever owned. I have a good amount of power stations, but I've never had a single charge controller by itself. So I'm excited to try this out. Now, as you can see, it has Anderson, big gray Anderson connectors here. And we have the MPPT. And this is Atem Power Zone. It's a 12 or 24 volt, 20 amp charge controller. You have a USB-A outlet here, standard. Now we have the solar, load, battery indicators. And then you have, this is where you connect solar. And then this is where you connect the battery. And then if you want a light, it shows the light indicator here. And there you have it. I'm gonna go ahead and open the solar panel, at least as much as I can. So there's these 2 straps here, Velcro, and it unravels like so. And I have one fold left, and then it looks like it opens up from there. But I honestly can't open this up in this office, or else I'm going to knock a bunch of stuff over. Okay, so I have the solar panel set up here. I did my best to use the loops and try and get it upright. I got it pretty much upright, but as you can see, it's not perfect. And you know, if you were hanging this off your car or off a tent, that would work, but I had to sort of use a makeshift method and like tie it to a chair, so I don't have the best setup. However, I got it to where all cells are decent and have a pretty decent angle to the sun. Right now it's about 9:30 a.m. It's pretty cold, it's like mid-20s, and the sun has a few branches in the way, but the shade level it's not ideal, but there's still mostly sun going to the panel, so this isn't the perfect setup. We're gonna go ahead and see how much we can get into the battery, and then one of my power stations, which is the EcoFlow River Max. Okay, so behind the solar panel on the upper right side, I have the area where everything's stored. If I open the Velcro, all it is the Anderson connector. So I connected the long cable that comes with the solar panel, and this will plug into the charge controller for charging my battery, which I have over here. First thing we're going to do is connect the battery with these alligator clips. I'm going to put these in on the battery first and then plug them in. Make sure to go negative first when considering charging from the alligator clips. That one's pretty secure there. Okay. And now we'll connect this Anderson connector into the battery section one. Make sure to connect the positive to positive and negative to negative, and then clip it in. There you go. Now we'll see that the green lights, it looks like we have a load light on. Battery is getting close to full, and as you can see, the solar light is not on because we have not connected it yet. And that is the next part, which we'll connect right now. All right, so that long cable that's connected to the panel, we'll go ahead and bring it over to the charge controller. And now we're just going to connect the solar panels into here, positive to positive, negative to negative, just like the battery was connected. All right, so I just connected these to the charge controller, and as you can see, this is how things should look. We have the battery on right here, showing the level of charge. The load was on before we connected solar, but now we have solar on here. And yeah, so that's how you connect it with all the parts from the Atem Power kit. And this is the battery that this did not come with it. I bought this separately, and you could see the battery specifications there. This little battery actually has a screen, which is not common, but it tells me the status, and it shows that it is charging, which is really nice. It's a 12-volt battery, and since it is an MPPT charge controller, it is charging it up at a little higher voltage. Try and get this. There we go. All right, so it just turned on. We can see we're getting 46 watts of input. And I didn't really have any expectations considering the sunlight conditions. So this is actually a fair amount of power considering that the angle is off, as well as some obstructions. And that's one of the benefits, I think, of having a larger solar panel, like a 200 watt one such as this, because you're going to get at least some power when there's poor conditions outside. So I mean, the fact that we're getting 45 watts is pretty significant for recharging something like this power station, because it's actually doing something. It's not like 2 watts from what you would get in a very small solar panel. I mean, just consider that if this was a 100 watt panel, you'd be getting half of this, which is about 25, 24, 23 watts. And that's nice to have. I never really thought about that with a larger panel like this, but all that considered, it's not bad for recharging. Also, for portable power stations, this solar panel kit comes with this cable, and it is an Anderson to it opens up to about 3 or more feet, and then you just connect it to the Anderson connector right here, and then that should be able to charge up your power stations or whatever you intend to power, as long as you have a connection that can take one of these. Now I have the panel laying flat, just on the ground, getting just, not any angle towards the sun. And getting about 16 watts. All right, so from my test, I just want to go over a few things, pros and cons wise. So the first pro is that it has a high amount of, the solar panel is rated for a high amount of watts. So it's a 200 watt panel. Obviously, you're not going to get that out of the panel. Some solar panels do allow you to do that, but from my test, even though it was not ideal conditions by any means, I don't think that this panel would be able to reach 200 watts unless it was literally perfect, a perfect day out. The first reason is because I would need to get the perfect angle of this panel, and that's really hard to do unless I have it like hanging on a tent that is angled right at the sun. I just don't see that being possible. However, I could see this panel reaching around 80% of its actual output, which is actually, in my opinion, it's a really good rating for a solar panel. So 80% of 200 is 160 watts. I think that's a really good output if it was able to do that. I wasn't able to test it like that because I didn't have really good conditions. My solar panel, I wasn't able to angle correctly. This doesn't have kickstands, and I just couldn't, it wasn't a good day for sunlight, and so I had a lot of things in the way. So I can't really confirm if it's going to output as much as it says, or 80% of that 200, but I do know that it will output at least up to around 56 watts in the conditions I was in today. And to me, I think that is actually a good output, because there were a lot of things in the way of getting the most out of this system. The next pro is that you could either use a battery or a power station to use this with. Now, this is ideal for using an external battery like the lithium iron phosphate one I used, because it has a charge controller with it. Now, that's another pro, but this is, the charge controller, if you're buying this, you might as well use it for a battery and not just a power station. If you're just using this system, this whole kit to charge a power station alone, then you're not going to need this, because your power station already has a charge controller. So if you're getting this kit specifically, it should be with the battery that I have, like the top, or whatever this one's called, the Talent Cell. You should use it with something like this, or something around that. Now, I did check the manual, and it said that you The controller is only for lead acid batteries, so lead, AGM, and gel. This is a lithium iron phosphate one, but it did work as far as I know. I mean, I'm at 12.9 volts, and this thing was getting towards the middle of the battery range, so it did charge it, and it worked fine for me. This battery is pretty small, so I won't get the full output that this panel is capable of, but for lithium iron phosphate, it worked well for me. Okay, next here, I have that it folds nicely, and I mean, this thing's pretty tall. I'm not sure exactly how much you could see on the screen, but I mean, this thing is pretty big. For a 200 watt solar panel, this is the first 200 watt one I've ever used. I'd say it's really compact once it's when folded. And I know that they call this a solar blanket on the manual. They even say it's a folding solar blanket. I've never heard of a solar panel referred to a solar blanket before, but I understand why, because when this is all unfolded, it's huge. I have one more pro here. All the cables it comes with a ton of stuff, both for a power station recharging and for use with the charge controller with the battery, and you pretty much have everything you need. Okay, and now I'm going to go over the cons. Now the first thing is that it's heavy, so that was what I already mentioned before, but yeah, it weighs around 17 pounds and it is heavy. This isn't something that will fit in your backpack. I mean, this thing is larger in terms of like width than just a normal backpack, and it's probably as tall as my actual like normal backpack. So, you know, it's still heavy, it's still pretty bulky, but the fact that they were able to make it compact like this, I mean, this thing is pretty much the same size, a little bigger than my, maybe not, of my LA Conta solar panel. This is a 120 watt solar panel. It's obviously lighter, but look at that. I mean, actually the LA Conta solar panel is longer than this one, and it's about the same width, maybe a little smaller. But yeah, it's pretty amazing that they were able to make it as compact as it is. I mean, the portability is nice, but it is still heavy, so you can't like fit it in your backpack or anything like that. Definitely a short distance carry for this. At that point, another con is the no legs or kickstand is with this. Now, I'm pretty sure that's why they call it a folding solar blanket. It's because you could just set it out like literally a blanket in charge. However, I don't see that being a factor for a lot of people where you could just, you know, put it right out where the sun's directly above head. So that was an issue for me because the other solar panels, I only have 2 other ones that I've tested that are even close to this range. They both have kickstands, and they're monumental in helping me set it up. And this was actually very difficult to set up due to just I wasn't able to use the loops very well. I didn't have anything to hang it on. So I would say that that's a pretty big downside, is that it just doesn't come with any kickstand, legs, anything. You have to hang it. It's probably the best way to do it. Or lie it flat on the ground if you have really good sunlight directly above. Another thing here is that it's very large, unfolded. I mean, this thing, you could tell by the thickness just here that once it's unfolded, I mean, it's probably just under 6 feet wide at its largest. And once it's unfolded, and it's pretty big, so I wouldn't recommend using this if you're trying to be compact or if you don't need 200 watts. If you can go with less, you might be able to have more portability if you just use a solar panel that is maybe 100 watts instead of 200. And also, just make sure you have somewhere to hang it. You have a designated space to hang it, like off your car somehow, or on a strong tent, because this thing's heavy. If you're going to hang it on a tent, it might not be able to support this panel because of how big it is. So just make sure you know how you're going to set it up before you actually do it, because if you just wait for the last minute, it might be a struggle to find a good area to use this. All right, guys, so the main question is, would I get this, or is it worth it, or should you get it? The main question you want to ask yourself before asking is it worth it is, what are you going to use it for? Because if you're going to use it for just typical camping and you're expecting it to just, you'll make a makeshift stand for it and you'll get it on the right angle yourself, I would not get this, because unless you have something set up already that will get it set up in the right angle, it's going to be a struggle. It took me a long time just to get set up for the solar test because I wasn't hanging it on anything. Next is basically who is it for is hanging on a car, using it like a blanket and just literally putting it on the ground as a blanket. Maybe you could find a hill that has an angle on it, or the sun is really high in the sky for you wherever you live. Then it would be ideal to use it as a blanket style. But for my purposes and where I live right now, especially in the winter, it's I get like a fourth of what I would normally get in terms of power when I have it as a blanket and laying flat in the ground. So it's really for someone who knows what they're doing when they're going to hang it up and utilize those loops. Okay, next year, now having that answered, is it worth it? Yes, it's worth it when you use it with a battery. So yes, a portable power station, if you have one and you want to use this to charge it, yes, but the primary reason to get this with the charge controller and the other cables is really to charge a battery, just a straight up battery like I was doing, because it comes with these, and you're not going to need this if you're just using it for a power station. So if you're using it with the battery, then yes, it is worth it, because you could really move around with it, you could camp with it, and if you're going on a camping trip, for example, and you're using an off-road vehicle, maybe it has one of those tents on the top of it, you could store the panel very well because all the cables and the charge controller fit into the pouch, and then you could really expand it on the side of your car or on the top of it, however you're going to do it. It really makes for a compact system that you could just expand and get that full, not 200 watts, but maximum, I'd say 160 watts in perfect conditions. So that is really where it's worth it, is if you're going to use it for a situation like that. And that being said, if you have more questions, or if you want more information on the details of the Atem Power kit that I'm testing, I would recommend checking out my article, which is linked right here on the screen. I'll go ahead and compare it to the other solar panels, portable solar panels I've tested, as well as possibly some others, and that will give you just a bird's eye view of how each one works and which features specifically make it better or worse than the other, so you could really see if this is correct for your needs. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate it, and I know it helps the algorithm or whatever, but if you actually enjoyed it, then throw me a like, and also comment if you have any questions. I'll be on YouTube a decent amount, and I'll be able to answer them. And subscribe if you want to see more reviews like this and more other and more questions answered. Stay tuned because I have more to review. And yeah, that'll be it. I want to thank Atem Power for helping me with this. I guess I could say they sponsored this video because they sent me this system, and I really do appreciate it, because I was able to work with a charge controller, which I've never really used one like this, and get my own battery where I could test that out. So thank you, Atem Power, and hope all you guys watching have a great rest of your day. Look forward to hopefully seeing you in another video.